Olympic great Mo Farah expressed relief earlier today after receiving a full backing from the UK government, despite his admission that he was illegally trafficked into Britain as a child. The revelation in a new BBC documentary that will air later today could have raised questions about Farah's UK citizenship, but the Interior Ministry said it was taking no action. A spokesman for outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he's a sporting hero, he's an inspiration to people across the country. Juanita van Heerden, director at Escape, which is a safe house for survivors of human trafficking, joins us now to speak a little bit further about this issue. A very good evening and welcome to Newsroom Africa. Certainly for sporting fans, this is not something that we ever thought we would hear from a four-time Olympic gold medalist. It certainly took us by surprise. As somebody that works in this space, what did you make of the revelations?
Thanks for having me. So, unfortunately, we work with it 24/7. So we see that trafficking is a very real reality. And I think this case also just shows how anybody can get trafficked, how any kind of vulnerability, it's not limited to a specific vulnerability, would get a person into a situation of being trafficked. And oftentimes, it's mainly women who are portrayed, and we work mainly with women, but there are a lot of men who also get trafficked, especially out of areas of Africa, and especially where there is poverty and a whole bunch of other risk factors involved. And the majority of the time it's sex trafficking, but it's also very common to see labor trafficking.
This is something that happened now 3 decades ago. Have you found that the trafficking hotspots have changed somewhat? So obviously, the case that we're talking about now was between Somalia and the United Kingdom.
Well, wherever humans are, people are being exploited, unfortunately. So it is everywhere. I know in a recent report that South Africa was named a hotspot where we're a transit country, where we have traffic survivors coming in and out of the country. But yeah, it is unfortunately everywhere. I think there is definitely a lot more trafficking as sexual exploitation also gets more widespread, especially with pornography. It's being more widespread, and therefore the demand is also much bigger. So in our case, we work more with sex trafficking.
It's an interesting case because Mo Farah, where he says Mohammed Farah is not actually my real name, but yes, he says that, I mean, he's gone on to dominate in the sporting space. He's become a global icon in sport. This is not the kind of future for most people that are trafficked. He really is an outlier.
Yes. Yes, that's definitely very rarely ever the case. As the data also shows, that only 1% of people who are trafficked actually ever get rescued. So, but we are grateful when survivors are able to rise to the top and use their voice and the obstacles that were placed in their path as stepping stones to be able to give encouragement to those who have been trafficked as well, so that they can see that there is hope. And I think it also breaks a lot of the stigma in terms of speaking out. So I think a lot of people have commended him for being very brave, and so do we, because oftentimes survivors are very scared to speak out because of threats and just abuse and violence. And so when somebody does actually speak out, it takes a huge amount of bravery, and we will always commend that.
This must help your work incredibly. Trafficking has been a huge problem in South Africa, in Southern Africa, but with all of the issues that we deal with socially, it is often lost among all of those issues. So this now has also brought it front and center, I suppose, for many people.
Yes. Yes, unfortunately, as you rightfully say, there's so much crime in South Africa that oftentimes trafficking gets underreported. But we are grateful when situations like these brings to light the reality of trafficking. And in South Africa, there's a lot of people who are trapped, and unfortunately the government is very under-resourced. So, and like for instance, we work with the Hawks, and there's not enough staff members on the Hawks who can help with raids and investigations. So we work in Cape Town, so I can only speak for the Western Cape. So there definitely are people who would want to get out. And if you'd like, I can also give the anti-trafficking hotline number in case somebody does have the bravery to want to come out.
Sure, you can go ahead.
So the anti-trafficking hotline number is 0800 222 777. And you can call 24/7. There will always be someone available.
How much of a problem is trafficking on the continent still?
Well, we haven't ever had a situation where we didn't have any survivors in our safe house, and we've been around for 11 years. And in our case, we've only had 90% of our survivors have been trafficked from within South Africa, within our very own borders, and only 10% have been trafficked from other countries, and mainly. Like almost all of those have been from African countries, not really from any other countries, except for one person. So it's either within South Africa, which is 90% is a pretty big number, which shows how vulnerable a lot of the people in South Africa find themselves to be able to be in a situation to get exploited and coerced, promised to come to the city for a job. They'll be promised 20K to work in a hair salon. And a lot of people are so desperate to grab for those promises, and then it turns out to be something completely different.
If you're not Mo Farah, though, and have brought a glory to the nation through sporting achievements, it could perhaps be a very different type of reality for you if you ever do come out and say that, in fact, I was trafficked into your country once you have a life there.
Yes. For migrants, unfortunately, our experience in Cape Town has been that there isn't a lot of assistance. We've worked with IOM before, International Organization for Migration. They're not currently in Cape Town, but when they were before, they really assisted a lot. Like I said, the government is very under-resourced when it comes to this kind of assistance. So unfortunately, yes. Oftentimes, like for instance, we've had a different survivor who was not documented at birth, and it was a very difficult thing to get her documentation. And after 4 years, we still weren't able to, just because of the under-resourced state of a lot of the departments.
Sure, it's taken an Olympic great to bring this into focus for many people. Certainly, I think in the sporting space that is the case, but a really important one, a very important social ill to be speaking about and to understand a little bit better. Juanita van Heerden, thank you very much. She's the director of ESCAPE, which is the safe house for survivors of human trafficking. We thank you for your time here on Newsroom Africa.